The legitimate sister has fallen for the aloof Buddha child, attempting to drug him in a bid to entice him into breaking his vows and eloping. I fiercely intervened, forcing her sacrificial scheme to a halt. However, unbeknownst to me, that very night, Princess Mingzhu abducted the Buddha child back to her palace. My legitimate sister, heartbroken, entered the palace by imperial decree and ascended to the rank of imperial noble consort. Yet, on the day of my birth, she seized my hair, stripped me of my garments, and burned 1,000 incense sticks, subjecting me to a torturous death. With prayer beads in hand, her eyes glistening with tears yet twisted with madness, she declared, "Anyone who dares to disrupt my union with Wuchen shall face eternal damnation." With a single command, a peachwood nail was brutally driven into my brow. Little did I comprehend that my legitimate sister's obsession with the Buddha child was so profound that she would go so far as to torment her own beloved sister to death. Once more, I find myself at the window, transcribing scriptures. I allow my legitimate sister to stealthily infiltrate the Buddha child's chamber. I met a tragic end, my curled body riddled with charred punctures and a long peachwood nail driven cruelly through my brow. My half-sister commanded that my corpse be discarded in a mass grave, left to be devoured by vultures and wild dogs. The day I perished was, ironically, my birthday. My half-sister stealthily brought me into the palace, claiming she had a surprise for me. With eager anticipation, I followed the matron into the palace, only to find myself led through a labyrinthine path into a stark, white morning hall. As I stood there in a daze, several eunuchs suddenly emerged, pinning me to the ground. They tore my garments asunder and forced me down before the ancestral tablet. Nearby, my half-sister, clad in white, held a string of prayer beads, resembling a celestial being descended to earth. Yet in the next moment, her visage transformed into one of rage as she yanked at my hair, her eyes brimming with malice and resentment. I could scarcely fathom that the sister I had relied upon, born of the same womb, would ruthlessly strip me of all my hair. She brushed the strands from her hands, smiling as she watched the eunuchs pierce my flesh with burning incense. Amidst my screams and wails, she knelt reverently on the mat, chanting fervently. I could hardly believe that this was my once kind and beloved sister. Why would she treat me thus? I questioned repeatedly what wrong I had committed to deserve such mercilessness. She delicately twirled the prayer beads, rising to stomp viciously on my neck. In an instant, I was rendered powerless to struggle, my body, punctured and burned, devoid of unscathed flesh. She gazed down at my suffering, laughing maniacally. "It's all your fault, you wretched girl. If it weren't for you meddling, I would have long been united with Wuchen as a celestial couple. Alas, my Wuchen has been sullied by that venomous Mingzhu. You deserve to die." My body trembled in agony, words failing me. The current Empress Dowager, enamored with the divine, frequently summoned renowned monks from across the land to discuss Buddhist teachings. Wuchen was one of the most distinguished among them, not only well-versed in various scriptures, but also strikingly handsome, earning him the moniker of the Cold Buddha among the common folk. Few knew, however, that he had already become a pawn of Princess Mingzhu, having deceived several noble ladies of their purity. My half-sister was among his targets, but I had fought tooth and nail to prevent her from yielding herself to him. Little did I know that she would harbor such a grudge against me for thwarting her pursuit of this heartless monk. Even after becoming the empress favored by all, she would lure me into the palace to torment me to death, callously sacrificing her own sister's life to honor her lost love. The air was thick with the scent of charred flesh and incense ash. Every inch of my bloodied body racked with pain as she forcefully shoved a stick of incense into my mouth. I silently screamed in agony, wishing for death to claim me on the spot. She crouched down, delighting in my misery, and taunted, "Does it hurt? This is merely the beginning. If not for your interference, Wuchen and I would have already flown away together. This is your retribution, ha ha ha." Despair enveloped me as I struggled, my body pinned to the ground, tears blurring my vision. She knelt on the mat, gazing adoringly at the ancestral tablet, while the eunuchs mercilessly pierced my flesh with incense, their actions unrelenting. My birthday slipped away amidst my cries of torment. The following day, my half-sister looked at my mangled form with a mad glee. "For daring to disrupt my bond with Wuchen, I shall ensure you never find peace." In the next moment, the long peachwood nail plunged violently into my brow. Blood gushed forth, and I died with my eyes wide open. I vowed that if I were to be reborn, I would make her life a living hell. 2. Recently, the capital was abuzz with excitement, for the Empress Dowager's birthday was approaching. In a display of filial piety, the emperor decreed that renowned monks from across the nation be summoned to celebrate her birth. Among them was a young monk named Wuchen, whose fame had spread like wildfire in just 2 days since his arrival in the capital. With a visage akin to a painting and an ethereal demeanor, his pure white monk robes made him appear as if he had descended from the heavens. The women of the capital were enamored by his chanting, captivated by the sight of his long fingers gracefully manipulating the prayer beads, his lips parting to reveal a voice as melodious as a tranquil stream. To highlight his uniqueness, the ladies of the realm privately referred to him as the Cold Buddha. My half-sister, having beheld him, was immediately entranced, falling hopelessly in love. Each day, she would clandestinely don a maid's attire to visit Jing'an Temple, solely to listen to Wuchen recite scriptures. She even lavishly offered 1,000 taels of silver for oil to the temple, hoping to gain his attention. Her actions finally caught Wuchen's eye, prompting him to gift her a string of prayer beads in gratitude. Yet, while my sister was lost in her beautiful fantasies, news suddenly spread in the palace that the Prime Minister's legitimate daughter was to be appointed as a consort. Being the talented and beautiful daughter of the Prime Minister, it was a fate that had been bestowed upon her since birth, and she could not resist or refuse. Moreover, our parents discovered her extravagant spending on the monk and were enraged, immediately confining her to the house. Before entering the palace, she would not be allowed to set foot outside the Prime Minister's residence. In my previous life, Lisa Ran had been confined to her courtyard, desperately pleading for release from her parents. In a bid to soften their hearts, she resorted to fasting, only to be force-fed rice porridge by a strong maid in the dead of night, after which she attempted to hang herself with a white silk ribbon. After enduring such turmoil, her mother dispatched maids to watch over her day and night, denying her any opportunity to harm herself. After being confined for a fortnight, my half-sister seemed to come to a realization, ceasing her death threats day and night. With a heart full of sorrow, she implored our mother to allow her a farewell with Wuchen, promising that she would wholeheartedly prepare to enter the palace as a consort, vowing to harbor no further illicit thoughts. Otherwise, even if she entered the palace, she would find countless ways to end her own life. Our mother, seeing her frail and numbed state, could not help but feel pity and reluctantly agreed to her request. Yet, I unwittingly discovered that she intended to drug the monk, attempting to seduce him with her beauty, hoping to elope together. In my previous life, seeing my sister so willingly descend into depravity, I fought tooth and nail to stop her, informing her of Wuchen's entanglements with multiple noble ladies and his status as a pawn of Princess Mingzhu. Yet, despite this, my sister persisted in her reckless pursuit, believing I was slandering Wuchen. Left with no choice, I had to order her to be knocked unconscious and brought back home. On the very night she planned to offer herself, Princess Mingzhu brazenly abducted Wuchen to her palace. Awakening to the truth, my sister's spirit was crushed as she entered the palace, and within 2 years, she became the empress, adored by all. Yet, I never anticipated that I would awaken once more on the very night she attempted to seduce the monk. The faint scent of sandalwood lingered in the air, reminiscent of the temple. Standing before the incense burner, I seemed to see the disfigured body I had become in my previous life from the incense burns. A cool breeze swept past, sending an involuntary shiver through me. Fate had granted me a second chance at life. Sujio, sister wishes to be alone for a moment. I turned to see my half-sister tightly clutching a small porcelain vial. Oh, very well, just be careful and don't wander too far. I feigned ignorance of her unusual behavior, responding before returning my focus to copying the Buddhist scriptures at the window. The sound of the door closing echoed behind me as I coldly observed my sister, clad in a sheer gauzy dress, bending to stealthily slip into the monk's chamber. An hour later, the tranquil temple was suddenly pierced by a frantic knocking at the door. I set down my brush, rubbed my sore wrists, and allowed a cold smile to curl at the corners of my lips. Finally, it had come. Princess Mingzhu, known for her lustful and tyrannical nature, had a penchant for collecting beautiful men, boasting more male concubines in her residence than her brother, the emperor, had consorts. And this Wuchen had been entangled with Princess Mingzhu in secret for 2 years already. The current circumstances are merely a playful indulgence between the two of them. I had anticipated that my elder sister would be caught in bed by Princess Mingzhu, but in the next instant, the door was violently flung open. My sister, draped in a torn veil, stumbled into the room. Upon noticing my gaze, she awkwardly wrapped her arms around her shoulders, and in the flickering candlelight, I caught sight of several ambiguous crimson marks upon her skin. I feigned astonishment and exclaimed, "Sister, how is your dress torn?" My sister, panic-stricken, hurriedly approached and covered my mouth, bending down to extinguish the candle on the table. This entire sequence unfolded in the blink of an eye. Yet I still discerned her clean, unblemished wrists. The vermilion seal had vanished. After a few moments, a procession arrived, carrying a palanquin to the meditation room of Wuchen. From the palanquin emerged a strikingly alluring woman, who, as if returning home, casually pushed open the door. Shortly thereafter, Wuchen, her steps unsteady, entered the palanquin, and the group departed in grandiosity. Yet the temple was enveloped in a profound silence, and we, concealed in the room across, could not escape the sounds of laughter emanating from the palanquin. I felt my sister's body tremble delicately, her grip on my arm tightening in a display of evident frustration. Once the procession had vanished, my sister collapsed to the ground, cursing vehemently, "You have ruined my plans, you wretched creature." I sighed in regret and crouched beside her, whispering my lament, how unfortunate for Master Wuchen to be taken away by Princess Mingzhu. My sister's breath momentarily halted. I continued to stoke the flames. "I wonder if Master Wuchen's constitution can endure the princess's whims. It is rumored she delights in torment." "Be silent," my sister snapped, and I feigned shock, hastily quieting down, tugging gently at her sleeve as I murmured, "Sister, what troubles you?" My sister paced back and forth like a caged beast, her murmurs incessant. "No. I must devise a plan. I must rescue Wuchen." I stood in the corner, coldly observing her. Li Sudan's obsession with eloping with Wuchen had reached a near madness. To witness Wuchen being abducted by Princess Mingzhu was akin to a dagger piercing her heart. In my previous life, I had severed the bond between my sister and Wuchen with a firm hand, allowing her to ascend to the lofty position of imperial consort. In this lifetime, I chose to refrain from interference. I was eager to see what extraordinary actions my sister would undertake to reclaim Wuchen. The affair between my sister and the Buddhist disciple was exposed. My mother, upon hearing from a maid of my sister's lost vermilion seal and the several ambiguous marks on her body, was so enraged that she spat blood and fell into a faint. My father, in a fit of fury, commanded that my sister be dragged into the ancestral hall, demanding she recount the entire incident, otherwise she would be expunged from the family tree and beaten to death. This was the first time my sister had witnessed my father's unbridled wrath. She did not dare confess that she had willingly drugged Wuchen and surrendered herself. She crawled to him in tears, clinging to his leg, her voice weak and helpless. "Father, I truly went to bid farewell to Wuchen that day. It was my younger sister who drugged us." I suddenly raised my eyes and indeed saw my father casting a dark glare in my direction. Before I could explain, he strode over and struck me across the face, declaring, "Rebellious daughter, kneel." A flicker of satisfaction crossed Li Sudan's eyes as she continued to weep. My younger sister once said she admired the emperor. Perhaps that is why she plotted against me. "You wish to take the place of Sudan as a consort in the palace?" Li Sudan's insinuation was unmistakable, and my father immediately grasped the underlying scheme. To be honest, I had anticipated my sister's betrayal. My father's reaction also fell within my expectations. Throughout my life, I was the nominal second daughter of the Prime Minister's estate. Yet I had always existed as a mere backdrop to Li Sudan, who received all the affection and attention from our parents. In the academy, while Li Sudan was engrossed in dance practice, she would neglect her assignments, even deceitfully taking mine. My father, upon discovering this, was outraged and struck my hand with a ruler until it was swollen, even knowing that it was my sister who had stolen my work. At the flower banquet, when Li Sudan was pushed into the water during a dispute with other noblewomen, I was punished upon returning home for failing to protect her. The exquisite brocade gifted by the palace would be used to create 2 new outfits for Li Sudan, while I would only receive a handkerchief. I had long sensed a peculiar aversion, if not outright hostility, from my father towards me. Whenever matters concerning me and Li Sudan arose, he would invariably side with her unconditionally. Thus, I covered my face and obediently knelt, murmuring, if sister says so, then so be it. My father, infuriated, kicked me to the ground, declaring his intent to disown such a malicious daughter. Father, please. Li Sudan leaped onto me protectively, feigning deep sorrow. My daughter is now a withered blossom. She cannot return to serve in the palace. You too are a daughter of the Prime Minister's estate. Why not let her enter the palace instead, thus alleviating our immediate crisis and fulfilling her admiration for the emperor? Father, I beg you to spare my younger sister. Do it for the sake of our family's reputation. Li Sudan wept, looking like a drenched pear blossom, her emotions sincere. If I were not the one she had wronged, I might have been deceived by her performance. My father, who cherished Li Sudan above all, was genuinely swayed by her flimsy arguments and began to contemplate the possibility of this arrangement. Ultimately, under Li Sudan's coaxing, he coldly huffed at me and left in a huff. Once the ancestral hall was left with only Li Sudan and me, she embraced me with feigned remorse, her tone thick with apology and sympathy. Younger sister, I am truly sorry, but I had no other choice. Please do not blame me, all right? In my previous life, after being punished, Li Sudan often adopted the guise of an innocent victim to placate me, and I had always believed her words. A slap followed by a sweet promise was her common tactic with me. However, in this life, I was no longer the gullible fool easily swayed by her. But sister, is it worth it? She stiffened momentarily. I tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear, gently holding her hand. I know you are deeply infatuated with Master Wuchen, but he is now the favored consort of Princess Mingzhu. Sister, you and Master Wuchen are fated to be apart. In truth, Li Sudan understood that attempting to rescue Wuchen from the princess's clutches was a fanciful notion, yet she clung to her feelings, yearning to elope with him. Younger sister. She suddenly grasped my hand tightly. Once you enter the palace, strive for favor and assist your sister, will you? I scoffed inwardly, yet feigned difficulty. I am neither as beautiful as you nor as talented. Confined within the harem, gaining power will be an arduous task. Seeing her eyes dim, I shifted my tone, however. However what? I bit my lip. On the day after tomorrow, the Empress Dowager's birthday, Princess Mingzhu will bring Wuchen to attend. It is said that she intends to ask for him as her consort. Li Sudan gritted her teeth, her expression contorted with rage. I shall not allow it. That will be your only opportunity to escape together with Master Wuchen, provided that Master Wuchen is willing to leave this place of turmoil with you. Upon hearing this, her demeanor softened, her eyes glistening with affection. We have already pledged our hearts and souls to each other. He will surely agree. I observed her expression, satisfied, and stated my final objective. Though Princess Mingzhu is licentious and lascivious, she possesses unparalleled beauty. I fear Master Wuchen may succumb to her charms. Why not perform a dance for the Empress Dowager on her birthday? With your beauty and grace, you will undoubtedly captivate the audience. In that moment, Master Wuchen will willingly join you, and you shall become a pair of envious celestial lovers. She was deeply moved by my words, lost in contemplation, her eyes shimmering with excitement and longing. I quietly withdrew from the shrine, and as I turned, a chill instantly enveloped my face. The fish had taken the bait. Before dawn on the 6th day, the courtyard of Li Sudan buzzed with activity. The scent of incense wafted in the air as preparations began. I had also arrived early to wait by her side. After she tried on her 10th outfit, smashed 5 teacups, and slapped her maid for the 3rd time, I finally approached her with a leisurely grace. I kicked aside a trunk full of splendid garments and retrieved a pristine white robe from the corner, adorned simply with red silk threads at the collar and waist. Sister, this will surely look lovely on you, pure and simple, perfectly complementing Master Wuchen's monk robe. Li Sudan cast a doubtful glance at me, but upon hearing my mention of the monk robe, she blushed and hurried behind the screen to change. As it turned out, my taste was quite commendable. When she emerged, the astonished gazes of her maids confirmed her beauty, prompting her to finally sit before the bronze mirror to adorn herself. After this commotion, the sun had fully risen. I took a teacup from her personal maid and presented it to her, playfully remarking, "Celestial sister, untouched by worldly dust. Let us sip some tea before we set off." She took a delicate sip, and I leaned in close to whisper after the dance, "Once a stick of incense has burned, you shall excuse yourself to the rockery. At that moment, I will inform Master Wichan to meet you there, where I will have arranged for someone to assist your departure." She nodded with satisfaction, her hands trembling with excitement. I smiled in return, content with the unfolding of my plan. Naturally, I had no intention of informing Wuchen, nor was there anyone to assist her, after all. I was merely a powerless and unappreciated second daughter. How could I possess the wealth and connections to orchestrate such schemes? I had no fear of Lisa Ran discovering this, for she would never have the opportunity. At the banquet, Princess Mingzhu and Wuchen were notably absent. By the time all the courtiers had presented their birthday tributes and the noble ladies began to showcase their talents, the two finally made their entrance. Princess Mingzhu walked in, her resplendent attire catching the light, exuding an enchanting aura that was utterly captivating. Beside her was a man clad in a white monk robe, his posture regal and his demeanor ethereal. Yet, their garments appeared slightly disheveled, and given Princess Mingzhu's reputation, their late arrival was glaringly evident. Lisa Ran noticed this as well. I heard her breath quicken and a fierce whisper escape her lips. "Wretched woman, shameless." Perhaps her gaze was too venomous and direct, for as Princess Mingzhu was about to take her seat, she suddenly turned to meet Lisa Ran's eyes. My legitimate sister was taken aback, hastily lowering her gaze and twisting the delicate handkerchief between her fingers. I observed Princess Mingzhu studying Lisa Ran with keen interest, glancing at her attire and the prayer beads adorning her wrist, then at Wuchen's white robe. Finally, a knowing smile graced her lips as she elegantly took her seat. Moments later, an imperious maid approached with a tray of wine, presenting it to Lisa Ran and me, stating, "From the princess." Lisa Ran's complexion paled as she sat frozen, unable to reach for the cup. I politely accepted it and downed it in one gulp, declaring, "Thank you for the princess's generosity." Seeing that I suffered no ill effects, she finally lifted the cup, shielding her face with her sleeve as she drank. While everyone was engrossed in Miss Wang's musical performance, I leaned closer to her and whispered, "The princess may have caught wind of our scheme. We cannot afford to delay any longer." She nodded, and when Miss Wang concluded her performance, she rose to bow before the Empress, declaring, "I have composed a dance for the Empress." Lisa Ran assumed her position, and in the next moment, ethereal music filled the grand hall, accompanied by the hauntingly beautiful chant of Sanskrit. She moved with the melody, her long sleeves flowing gracefully, her delicate form twirling, each step like a blossoming lotus. The audience was utterly entranced. I raised my cup and drank deeply, discreetly covering my nose with my hand. Suddenly, an unexpected and loud sound erupted, startling everyone. Lisa Ran's body froze mid-dance. A series of loud, unmistakable sounds followed, leaving the gathered nobles staring in disbelief at Lisa Ran in the center. The noble ladies covered their noses with handkerchiefs, gazing at the paralyzed figure with disgust. A thunderous noise finally jolted Lisa Ran back to reality. Her face flushed crimson. She looked around in panic. Yet, as the old saying goes, one can endure a journey of 1,000 miles while holding their bladder, but holding back a bowel movement is a different matter entirely. She was clearly at her limit. Slightly bending at the waist, her legs pressed tightly together, her hands fidgeting as if to cover her rear. The Empress's expression darkened. Her nose pinched in displeasure as she prepared to signal for Lisa Ran to leave, only to be met with a sudden uproar from the crowd. In that moment, Lisa Ran had lost control. A foul stench permeated the banquet, and her parents finally reacted, rushing forward to pull her away. In that turn, she inadvertently revealed the conspicuous yellow stains on the back of her white robe. The noble ladies shrieked, covering their faces. Ugh! The children screamed, retching. What had begun as a splendid banquet was utterly ruined. The elopement plot came to naught. She didn't even manage to exchange a word with Wuchen. Following this incident, Lisa Ran became the subject of ridicule throughout the capital and beyond. Deeply affected, she locked herself away in her room, spending nearly every moment soaking in a bath. I could not allow her to wallow in despair. After all, this was merely the beginning. During a visit, I accidentally let slip. Princess Mingju has begun to neglect Wuchen and recently sent him back to Jing'an Temple. She grasped my hand tightly, her eyes wide with bloodshot urgency. Is that true? I nodded, my anger spilling forth as I stated, Sister, do not hold any affection for Wuchen. He has undoubtedly grown fond of the princess. He wishes for the princess to bear his children, but the princess is unwilling, thus he refuses to share a chamber with her. In a fit of anger, the princess sent him back to Jing'an Temple. Li Siran gasped for breath, seemingly overwhelmed with excitement. I smiled slightly and turned to leave. That evening, my legitimate sister began to don maid attire once more, sneaking off to Jing'an Temple. While my sister was entwined with Wuchen night after night, the palace issued a decree. The second daughter of the Prime Minister's house, Li Suzhou, was to be made a consort, to enter the palace in 3 months, as my sister had wished. After her public embarrassment at the banquet, the emperor finally bestowed upon me the title of consort. However, on that very day, an uninvited guest barged into my chamber. The scorned Princess Mingzhu lay sprawled across my bed, fast asleep. Upon hearing the commotion, she slowly opened her eyes, propping her head with one hand and grinning mischievously at me. Forget about being a consort. Why not come to the princess's residence for a bit of fun? I poured myself a cup of tea, casting her a faint glance. Recently, I've acquired a young man from Yaojiang, broad-shouldered and slim-waisted. With incredible stamina, he is practically a little demon. Pfft. I couldn't help but spit my tea out. Stop. I have no interest in your scandalous escapades. Mingzhu pouted, her dissatisfaction evident in a soft huff. I am an unremarkable, quiet, and well-mannered second daughter. Mingzhu is a flirtatious princess who dreams of possessing all the handsome men in the world. It would be hard for anyone to imagine that beneath the surface, Mingzhu and I share an intimate friendship. It was in my past life that I learned of Wuchen's deceit in tarnishing a noble lady's virtue, and of his night of revelry with Mingzhu. Hey, Xiaojiao, don't you care about your legitimate sister? How can you tolerate her dalliance with Wuchen? Mingzhu's eyes sparkled with curiosity. I replied coldly, she is not worthy of my concern. Oh dear, sisters turned enemies. Is it a moral decline or a distortion of humanity? Tonight at 8 o'clock, CCTV will report this timely news. I sighed in resignation. Mingzhu often spoke in riddles I couldn't comprehend, and now she was at it again. The candlelight flickered as Mingzhu and I chatted late into the night, until a sudden knock on the window interrupted our gossip about the capital. Xiaojiao, my young man from Yaojiang has come to fetch me. I shall take my leave, she said with a playful smile, climbing onto the windowsill. Yet, before departing, she grew serious and warned me, I know not what transpired between you and your elder sister, but that Wuchen is not a good person. His mind is rather unhinged. He revels in the idea of having a green hat, do you understand? I gazed at her, bewildered. Well, if you still care for your sister, you ought to persuade her to distance herself from Wuchen, or else. Mingzhu raised an eyebrow at me teasingly before being swept away by a tall young man. Indeed, I did care for her, to the extent of wishing her ruin and a disastrous fate. Li Siran had once again taken to soaking in the bathtub daily. Her anxious maid approached me, imploring, Second Miss, please go see the eldest Mississippi. For the past few days, every time she returns from Jing'an Temple, she immerses herself in the bath. I feared she was merely upset by unkind words, but I discovered she bore injuries. My hands froze mid-cutting flowers, recalling Mingzhu's words about Wuchen's unstable psyche. Behind the screen, Li Siran sat submerged in the tub. After several days, she appeared significantly thinner, her lips pale, and her eyes bloodshot. Just as her maid had said, she bore bruises and cuts on her neck and shoulders. Upon seeing me, she submerged deeper, exposing only her sharp chin, and barked at me, get out. Leave. Her demeanor hinted at something troubling, and I obediently exited the room. Moments later, she emerged, now dressed and composed, stating, Sister, I fell while descending the mountain and sustained some scrapes, hence, my mood is a bit off. I did not mean to snap at you. You won't hold that against me, will you? I shook my head obediently. It's quite all right. I bear no grudge. Seeing my naivety, Li Siran grasped my hand tighter, as though clinging to a lifeline. Wuchen intends to take me away, marrying me as a wife while keeping me as a concubine. We plan to wed in 2 days, just the two of us. Will you be my witness? I looked down, feigning contemplation, unsure. She squeezed my hand with increasing urgency, as if a drowning person grasping at their last straw. Please, sister. I nodded in agreement. Of course, I would not attend the wedding. Although I was a reincarnated individual, lacking in strength and power, I would be mad to leap into such a crude trap. I borrowed a shadow guard from Mingzhu to gather intelligence. As dawn approached, he returned, hesitating before relaying, Wuchen has been kidnapped by a band of rogues. To save his life, Li Siran willingly surrendered herself to them, even in front of Wuchen. I lowered my gaze, realizing why she had been so intent on cleansing herself these past days, and why her body bore so many signs of abuse. How deeply she must have felt for Wuchen. The shadow guard continued. Li Siran pleaded for mercy, promising to offer a pure noblewoman tonight in exchange for Wuchen's life. But since you did not appear, the rogues have grown furious, and she is being subjected to even harsher torment. The teacup in my hand shattered. For I understood that tonight would be a trap. I had not anticipated that my elder sister would be willing to sacrifice me for her beloved. A wave of anguish swept through me. In my past life, she had slaughtered me under the pretext of my meddling in her affair with Wuchen. And what of this life? In her eyes, I was a devoted sister who wholeheartedly supported her, yet she still intended to sacrifice me to save her paramour. The sympathy I felt upon hearing her surrender was instantly extinguished. I whispered a few instructions into the shadow guard's ear, handing him a pouch of gold before he departed. As I gazed out the window, my eyes glimmered with icy determination. Li Siran, this path is one you have chosen for yourself. 2 days later, on a bustling street, a woman lay exposed and battered. Her body was marred with bruises and wounds, her spirit seemingly shattered. She cried out, I am the Prime Minister's legitimate daughter, the imperial concubine. You all be gone. Upon hearing this, my father rushed to Li Siran's quarters only to find a maid impersonating her. Furious upon learning of Li Siran's clandestine meeting with Wuchen, he ordered her to be beaten to death on the spot. Despite his rage, he still took his beloved daughter home, summoning the finest doctors and the rarest medicines. I observed coldly, offering no commentary. On the eve of entering the palace, Li Siran burst into my courtyard in the dead of night, resembling a madwoman. It is you. Isn't it? You have reincarnated too? I leisurely poured myself a cup of tea, smirking as I replied, Sister, what are you talking about? I do not comprehend. She shrieked in despair, you wretched girl. You are the one who has brought me to this state. Why didn't you stop me from meeting Wuchen? I will kill you. I couldn't help but chuckle, observing her contorted face. Your selfishness and indifference never ceased to astonish me. In my previous life, I intervened. And what happened then? Have you forgotten that you burned me alive with incense? That you tormented me for an entire night, only to nail a peach with stake into my brow after I died? This time, as you wished, I shall refrain from meddling in your affairs with Wuchen. Yet, you are still dissatisfied? Upon hearing Wuchen's name, a flicker of madness ignited within her, and she began to screech, Wuchen. He is no human. He orchestrated my ruin. Get away. Don't touch me. Li Siran curled up, clutching her body tightly, her head shaking in denial. You are the one who has wronged me. I am the legitimate daughter. I am the imperial concubine. Your Majesty, I wish to see His Majesty. I lit an incense stick and forcefully seized her hair, shoving the burning incense into her mouth as she screamed in terror. Li Siran writhed on the ground, her gaze fixed on me as though I were venomous. I elegantly clapped my hands, relishing in her disheveled state from above. As she faded into unconsciousness, I chuckled softly, Sister, you must live well. I have a grand gift to bestow upon you. I entered the palace, receiving instruction directly from Mingzhu, and soon garnered the Emperor's exclusive favor. In my leisure time, I occasionally perused the folk art books purchased from outside the palace. For instance, this one. The illustration depicted a woman bound to a wooden frame, her expression one of utter despair and agony, clad only in two thin veils that barely concealed her modesty. Behind her stood a solemn Buddha statue, with a young monk rhythmically striking a wooden fish. Below, the worshippers held incense, greedily gazing at the woman on the frame, whose body was riddled with charred holes. It was both cruel and bizarre. As I continued to gaze, laughter escaped my lips and my feet danced joyfully. The Emperor has arrived. I casually tossed the illustrated book into the brazier, where it still contained a plea for help from my father. Lisa Ranna's disappearance? What concern was that of mine? As the flames consumed the pages, I rose to greet the young emperor. Outside, snow fell in flurries, while laughter and chatter